Hello and welcome to another edition of the Weighing Room podcast, where today we'll be previewing the action from Epsom's Derby meeting across both the Friday and the Saturday. As ever, I'm joined by Frankie Foster. Frankie, how are we?
All good, thanks, James. Yeah, pretty steady and just looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, definitely. It's set to be 2 great days of racing. And we're also joined by Paul Callaghan. Paul, how's everything in Ireland?
Oh, it's good now. It's a damp and dull afternoon here, but enjoying my own company for the next few days. So I've no choice but to watch the racing. So yeah, looking forward to a couple of great days at Epsom.
Yeah, obviously, lads, I've been dipping in and out of the podcast over the last few weeks with being on my holidays, but I had to come back this week for the Derby. Obviously, it's one of the best races of the year on the flat, and it's just generally a great meeting. What's your thoughts, Paul? We'll start with you on just looking briefly at the card at the moment. Who's the horse in the Derby that you're looking at the moment that you think can really go out and run a big race?
I quite like James Mount. I know we'll come to that later on. I just thought, I know Desert Crown is 2 from 2, and Sir Michael Stout, Richard Kingston on board, drawn a stall 12. You have to kind of sit up and take notes, So Michael, his record speaks for itself. Your Stone Age, Fred O'Brien, Ryan Moore, drawn a stall 4, has to be of interest. William Buick's gone for Nation's Pride, but Walk of Stars, I thought, he's a horse with a huge engine. And I just thought was doing the bare minimum and probably learned more on his last run at Lingfield than he did in his previous starts. So to get that close to the United Nations at Lingfield and be, I suppose, what you call taking the mix, so to speak, he's a horse with huge ability. And I just think he should get a lead here, drawn a stall 9. As per usual, it's set to be a fascinating encounter.
Yeah, we'll touch on more on the actual Derby later on in the pod. But Frankie, another race we'll just discuss briefly is obviously the Oaks. What a race this could be. 11 going to post at the moment. Who's the one that's caught your eye at this moment?
Yeah, I think this is probably the race I'm most looking forward to. I think ahead of the Derby, I think it's a cracking Oaks. One that I think is massively overpriced is Thoughts of June. I can't see why that's knocking about 16s. So would I be back in the Fav at 5 to 4? Not myself with my own pennies. Looks a strong favourite, but I'd say too short in the betting for me. Yeah, Thoughts of June is one that kind of stands out as being overpriced at current.
Well, we'll discuss all this a lot later on in the show, but we're going to start off this week's podcast looking at the first race on the Friday from Epsom, which is the Kazoo Woodcote British EBF Stakes, conditions race over 6 furlongs. Frankie, we'll start with you. Quite a tricky one, full of a lot of nice youngsters. Who did you land on?
It is. There was 2 I was looking at, which are kind of opposite, because one's Silencer with only 1 run to his name, and the other's Blatant, which is one of the more experienced horses in the field. And they've swapped in the betting. Lots of money's come for Silencer, gets shorter and shorter. And Blatant just keeps going further and further out, which is putting me off. But sometimes prices can play to your favour, and sometimes you can get stung following the market. So I'm going to stick with my guns with Eve Johnson's Blatant in this. As I said, one of the more experienced horses. Took until being stepped up just that extra furlong to 6 furlongs last time out at Leicester to finally get the success after being well backed on 3 starts. So they clearly like this horse and went off favourite for 3 and managed to get the job done over 6 last time out. And I think maybe just that experience back here again at 6 furlongs off the back of a win, drawn in stall 3. In a race we don't know much about, lots of horses, I'm willing to stick with the horse we know a bit more about and has won over distance last time out and is clearly well fancied by the yard.
Yeah, I like the way Blatant won last time out and was one that I also looked at. But I went for another horse with very similar experience. I think experience is what I want to get behind, even though I'm going to go for Legend of Xanadu with William Buick on board for Mick Channon. Even though carrying the penalty, and like Blatant carrying a penalty, and the favourite Commander Strake is also harbouring a penalty. I don't mind that in these sort of races. I like a horse that is coming into it that maybe doesn't have to learn as much as the other. Look, there could be something in this horse. There's something in this field that's a bit of a freak. We don't know. We can only go on the bare form of what we can look at, and that's why Legend of Xanadu is for me about 5 to 1, coming from about 11 to 2. So the market Doesn't mind it at the moment, but I just think this horse is very consistent. And the step up to 6 furlong last time out of Redcar on good to soft ground. And look, it's drying out at Epsom, but there could still be some showers, and it could be good to soft by the start on Friday before it gets drier. Thought it was unlucky on its 3 occasions before its win. He just looked quite progressive. The way he won with Buick on board last time out by about 5.5 lengths, close to six lengths, I thought was impressive. And he might not have to do too much more, depending on how good the others are. I just thought it was quite a solid each way bet, around 5 to 1, 11 to 2.
Silencer does tick that box of maybe being a special horse in this race, doesn't it? Most expensive horse in the race, entered into a class 4 to start, absolutely smashed in on the money. If you're a gambling man, that's you want to follow in, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
He could be anything, Silencer, couldn't he?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, on only a second start, he's clearly held in some regard and thought,
yeah,
like, you know, he's mentally prepared for this, like, which is on only a second start.
Yeah, no, definitely.
For those connections as well, they don't get it wrong a lot, do they?
No.
Guitar racing. So, Paul, who was your selection in this one?
I've come down on the side of Estate for Andrew Balding and David Probert. Estate finished 2nd of 8 behind Commander Straker at back last time out over the 5 furlongs. I reckon he was probably taken off his feet a little. He was only beaten a length and a half by the winner. I think the step up to 6 furlongs will suit. He's drawn a stall 11, which is an obvious concern, but there's bound to be plenty of pace on early here, and I think that should counteract the outside draw. So it's Estate for me on only his career start, number 3 for Andrew Balding and jockey David Probert.
Yeah, it's a bit of a minefield in this race, and it's probably just one taking a punt on, and we'll learn a lot more after the race than we will before, definitely. So we'll have to see what happens in that one. So next up on the Friday at Epsom is the 2:35, the Whirlpool Handicap Stakes, Class 2, over 1.5 miles a furlong. Paul, we'll start with you on this one. Another tricky one to get stuck into. Who did you land on?
Yeah, and I think if you're, well, I've gone with Excel Power, and if you're in the same camp, it's going to be interesting prior to, you know, watching the prelims. He's unbeaten over 1 mile. He's won his last 3. He won a similar event off a handicap mark of 88 at Haydock back in April. Like I said, he looked to have his race ran before the gates even opened at Windsor last time out, but he still won, and won well. He done a lot wrong and still got the job done in fairly impressive fashion. Like I said, he won a similar event off 88, 2 starts back. He lines up here off 98. I think if he handles the prelims, he has a serious chance here from stall 5.
Yeah, best horse in the race, obviously, on figures alone. It's just if he can harbour the weight against the rest, and that's the chance you take in handicap sometimes, isn't it? Frankie, who did you come down on in this one?
Yeah, I liked Excel Power as well. The top 2 for me, they're nearly joint favourites now, looking at it, Excel Power and Totally Charming. I'd maybe be slightly swayed towards Totally Charming. George Boy, Buick rides, switching back to turf. Could just be a well-placed horse, this, with the last, 5 runs on the all-weather. It's gone off favourite, very well backed for the last 3 of those. Got the job done over 1 mile, 1 last time on the all-weather, so handles a trip, and as I said, could just be well placed now, coming back onto the turf off a rating of 91 might be the difference against Excel Power. But Excel Power does look incredibly progressive and could be beyond 98 himself. So I'm looking at the top 2, but probably swayed more towards Totally Charming at the moment.
Yeah, Totally Charming was one I looked at. But then going down the field, I thought, you know what, I'm going to have a go at one at a price. And the one that stuck out to me was the Charlie Fellows C-set, nice son of Wootton Bassett, been seen 3 times this season and made a winning seasonal debut in a Class 3 handicap at Nottingham on good to soft ground. And this is the key, like at the moment it says good to soft. I think it will dry out by the time the Derby comes. But I think that the early races, you might just have a bit more juice in the ground than it might do later on in the card. So we'll have to see on that, but that's the opinion I'm taking. Second race, he was dropped 7 furlong at Chelmsford. He saw him give one of his worst runs of his career, but back up to 1 mile last time out of York. He was drawn on the wrong side of the track where all the action was taking place and was a very close 5th of 20. If you look at the bare form and think, he's 5th. If you actually watch the race back, he was getting there, and just the line came too soon. Runs off the same mark in this event, back of it his preferred trip. 8.5 furlongs. I thought you couldn't be overlooked around 12-1 mark at the moment. I'm happy to play each way with some bookies, offer some extra places, definitely with that. And I thought he might be a bit of a steal of a price at 12-1. So the first big race of the Derby Festival that we're going to cover, gents, is the Coronation Cup, the Group 1 Coronation Cup, over 1 mile 4. Only 6 go to post for this one. The favourite at the moment is a William Muir and Chris Grassick, pole drive 15-8. We've got Manobo for the Appleby and Godolphin team at 5-2. High Definition for Aidan O'Brien at 9-2. Hookham, Throwing Burrows at 9-2. Living Legend at 10-1. And then the outside of the field, about 100-1, is Pallavicino for Brian Meehan. Frankie, we'll start with you on this one. Only a 6-runner affair, but I thought quite a good, tasty renewal, really, with the horses near the top of the market.
It is, yeah. And, you know, pole driver last year's winner ticks a lot of boxes. Frankie on board. He's won Group 1 race, you know, this race last year. He's raced in group races all around the world and performed in all of them over the trip. And 7-4 could be a bit of value, but I can't get away from Aidan O'Brien's High Definition. Maybe the horse with a little bit more left in the tank that you know, quite haven't seen his best yet. And that second at the Curragh to Alan Kerr looks to be good form, with that horse going on to win, or not be far behind Pile Driver, I think, if I'm looking right. Where am I looking? In High Definition. Yeah, I'm lost in the form here. But, yeah, High Definition. That second last time out of Aidan O'Brien. Aidan O'Brien, I think, has won this race something like 7 or 8 times since 2005. And I'm willing maybe to take the favourite on here.
Yeah, High Definition has been such a frustrating horse, really, for what they thought it was going to be. And then its run last time out was like he put everything together. It was an unbelievable ride from the front by Ryan Moore. And I thought he'd gone and done it in that Tattersalls Gold Cup. I was on state arrest that day and still hit state arrest for a great race. But I really felt for High Definition the last time out. And maybe stepping up that extra 2 furlongs. We'll see, and there's a 92 shot to see. So, Paul?
Yeah, so just looking at it now, I was looking at the Maydam race where Alan Kerr was in 6th, just half length behind Pile Driver, and then went on to beat High Definition by a neck. So there might be, like I said, a little bit of room for improvement, and that suggests that they're not far off each other. And at the prices, High Definition, I'd probably side with.
The only worry I had for High Definition, I think the race was 12 days ago.
Yeah,
and he went from the front, absolute hammer and toe, stayed. And for a race 1 mile 4 around Epsom, it might just come too soon. But look, if there's one man who can train a horse and get it right for this, it's definitely Aidan O'Brien. So at 9-2 might have a big chance. Paul, who's your fancy?
I've gone with Hookham. I thought he was slightly disappointing when finishing 7-15 at Maidan one last season. Prior to that, he was a good winner at the same venue. He'll need a fast pace, which he should get with Living Legend in the field. And you'd imagine Manobo and Pile Driver will go forward as well. They'll probably sit second and third. High Definition, he'll go forward as well. So you'd imagine the pace will be fairly generous. And he'll also need a little bit of luck as well, which he should get. Small field here. He just faces the 5 rivals. So there shouldn't be any excuses for Hookham. And I think at a bit more of a working man's price, he might just represent a bit of value at around the 92 mark.
Yeah, Hookham is a horse I've got a bit of a soft spot for. I really do like Hookham, but I have gone against him in this race, and I really couldn't get away from Pile Driver. I really couldn't. Obviously, like you mentioned, Frankie, last year's winner, coming off the back of a really good performance in Dubai, went a close 4th in that Dubai Shima Classic. Been saved since then for this race. It's perfect conditions. The way he battled to win last year against LRC, who's come out and shown that it is the horse everyone thinks it is by winning already this year in quite a nice race. I just think he's got quite a lot going for him. I like William Muir, Chris Grassick. Like, this horse has been their stable star. He's got some serious back form, probably the best back form in the race compared to all these. Yeah, I couldn't get away from him, and I thought 15-8 might be a nice price. Look, Manobo is a horse that could be something extra special in the field, I think. Trying at 1 mile 4. High Definition, like I said, might come a bit too soon. Hookham I am worried about. and Living Legend and Pallavicino, they are the outsiders of the field. But I think Living Legend, as you say, from the front could run a big race. But for me, I think Pile Driver will have enough. And another thing around Epsom, it's a very tricky track to ride. And if your horse handles it and is proving he's handled it, and it's one of the only horses in the field that does handle that, has shown it's handled it, I'm happy to go with Pile Driver at the top of the market for me. So that would be my selection in this. So one of the toughest races to call on the Friday, from my perspective, is the Kazoo Handicap over 1 mile 2. Paul, we'll stick with you for this one, first time up. I found this really difficult, this market. I found it really, really difficult. Who did you come down on?
Yeah, I was looking for, handicaps. You always look for something at a bit of a price that might just outrun their odds. But I found it hard to get away from the David Nusia trained Soto Sizzler. Ryan Moore in the hot seat, nicely drawn in stall number 3. I can't get past his course form. Soto Sizzler's previous visits to Epsom read 1-1, second, and was a course and distance winner last time out, having been slow away. Ryan Moore was on him last time out. He's ridden him a few times in the past. He knows him well, which is going to be important here, I think. He's a horse that has his issues with the stalls. And he lost ground at the start last time out. He won't want to, with such a big field, he won't want to lose too much ground here. I'm hoping he can get a fairly level break here, and that we'll see his fondness for Epsom once more. So it's Solo Sizzler.
This gelding absolutely loves racing around Epsom, doesn't he? He really, really does. And you can't knock any horse. Like I said, like I was mentioning with Pile Driver, you can't knock any horse that runs well around here, because I don't think people realise how difficult it really is. When you look at the past form of a lot of horses around Epsom, a lot of them seem to just turn up here, and other horses might have better form, but if they have better form around Epsom, it's worth taking into account. So yeah, Soto Sizzler was one I noted down as well. I think it's definitely got a good chance. And David Manisia is a brilliant trainer, I think, absolutely brilliant trainer. Yeah. So yeah, definitely win the chance. Frankie, who's your selection in this one?
I couldn't have Soto Sizzler just off the weight. It's 9.10. I thought was just a bit high, but I mean, confidence. They booked Ryan Moore to ride, and they're going to have a crack. And as you said, that course form is incredible in the race with all the prices and all the where you are trying to find one maybe at a handy weight. I'm going to stick with the favourite. Just really good what he's shown this year. Didn't do a whole lot last year. Picked up 1 success, but racing in Class 4s, and then this year 2 runs to his name. One won a Class 4 easily, went up to £7, and then won easily again in a Class 2 again. Has gone up in the ratings yet again. But it's looked a different horse this year, and has won both races comfortably and has handled with the rise in the ratings. And it's not outrageous to go from 92 to 97, another £5 rise. And I think has a fair chance off a 9 stone 2 here.
He's quite difficult, the handicapper. Sorry, he looks a horse on his last 2 wins. Frankie, he's quite difficult to assess for the handicapper. He's probably more value than the distance it suggests, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the only thing that put me off this horse was its price of 7-2. And look, I could see this even going shorter. And it's funny to say, really, because in such a race where you want to try and find value, it might be difficult when you've got such a favourite like this. But I have gone against you both in this one, and I've tried to look at one, like you said, Paul, a horse at a bigger price that might outrun its odds. And around the 9 to 10 to 1 mark is Cap Francais, Brian Williams. A bright horse as a 3-year-old, finishing ahead second in the listed Blue Ribbon Derby trial over course and distance. Like we were talking about with Soto Sizzler, this horse only ran once at Epsom and gone on to run really well. So I'd like to think it likes the course. He lost his way under Ed Walker over the last year or so, only winning once more after that second off a mark of 95 at Haydock over a mile, and then was moved to Ian Williams in the summer of last year. Took some time to warm up under Williams and looked quite a hard horse to get right, it looked like. But recently, he's looked a very, very different animal, especially this season. Went to Newmarket on its seasonal debut off a mark of 93, over 1 mile, 1 furlong in April, and won a good handicap. Went up £5 for that run. Last time out going to Chester, and was only beaten a length in another nice handicap event. Obviously, Chester's another tricky track to get right, and that was on good to soft again that day. And I just thought he got going too late. Was running really late on and just got going too late. Should handle the track around 10 to 1 in the form he's in. I'm happy to take a chance on Cap Francais and still see if he can keep in the form he's in, and he's running off the same mark. So I don't mind that at all. So, chaps, the feature event of the Derby meeting on the first day of Epsom is the Epsom Oaks. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, it looks a really cracking renewal with 11 going to post this year. I'll just talk through the top of the market. Emily Upjohn currently 11 to 10 favourite for the Gosdens. The Gosdens also have the second favourite in Nashua with Holly Doyle on board around 4 to 5 to 1. Aidan O'Brien has the next two with Concert Hall and Tuesday joint at 9 to 1. And then with the Moonlight 10 to 1, Tranquil Lady 14 to 1, Thoughts of June 16 to 1, 20 to 1 bar the rest. Paul, is it as simple as the favourite just goes and hacks up in this, or is there value elsewhere?
I think it could be as simple as that, James. I think she looks exceptional. You know, I think she'll be better as well with a bigger field. She was quite keen in the Musadora last time out at York. And prior to that, she was very impressive at Sandown on seasonal reappearance. I think the bigger field, faster gallop, I think we'll see a more improved Emily Upjohn here. You'd be a brave man taking her on seriously. I think I think maybe if you're getting involved in the winning distance market, but if you had to have a bet at bigger prices, I could see Rogue Millennium outrunning her odds. I think she's interesting at a price. She's 2 from 2 and 7 and 8 runner fields, so you're going to have to, if you are getting involved, it'd be small money for a bit of crack. She's around about the 25 to 1 mark here. She will need to improve, but she's got a decent pedigree and she's by Dubawi, and she might just run well here at a bit of a price. So Emily Upjohn, I think, How Far, and Rogue Millennium with 4 places on offer might be worth a small each way flutter.
Yeah, the first bit of what you said, I'm absolutely behind you on that. I think Emily Upjohn, I think it's as simple as she goes and wins, and it's by How Far. I think she's very hard to take on, and I do think she's extremely special. I think she's a bit of a freak personally, and for a horse in the flat game that costs 60,000 guineas to go and win the way it has on its runs, and to be an 11 to 10 favourite for the Oaks, it's just what you dream about really as a trainer, isn't it? As an owner, sorry. But yeah, this horse, the way it's won at Sandown and York last time in the Musadora, I thought the extra 2 furlongs she'll get in this race will only suit her, not go against her. I just think she's really, really special. But like you say, we might want to find some each way value elsewhere, and around the 9 to 1 mark, I think Concert Hall for Aidan O'Brien's the best of the O'Briens for me. This filly has a very similar profile, I find, to Snowfall, but I don't think she's as good as Snowfall, but I think she has a very similar profile to her in the sense that she was an average 2-year-old that looks a much better 3-year-old. And if you look at the way she raced last time out in the 1,000 guineas over in Ireland, she was done for a bit of pace early on with about 2 furlongs to go, and then she stayed better than everything in the race. And if you'd have given probably 100 more yards, she'd have beat Tuesday, and she'd have got closer and closer to Homeless Songs. Don't get me wrong, Homeless Songs is an absolute freak of horse, and Paul, you're absolutely bang on with that, how good that horse was. And she wouldn't have got close to that horse that day. But I'm just saying, now an extra half a mile to have a go at, I think Consort is going to suit this trip massively. And I think Emily Upjohn will win this race, but Consort will fly home for second, and that would be my opinion on the race. Paul, Frankie, who are you going with?
Confidence from Paul and for yourself, to be fair. And I mean, rightly so, Emily Upjohn could just go and scoot up here. It was, you got a hot favourite for the Derby and for the Oaks, and you're trying to take on, I think, one of them. They could both go and win quite well. This was the race I'd probably be trying to take on the favourite, or at least find some value. And the one I think is overpriced, at least, is Thoughts of June. Maybe some of that bias, as I always say, when I'm on course and see a horse win well in the flesh, it seems to stick with you that little bit more. And that week at Chester, Thoughts of June was very, very impressive that day. And I think it was quite telling that they had Aidan O'Brien wasn't there, but they had a lot of connections there who were very excited, all in the paddock beforehand to see this horse race. And they thought a lot of it. And, form stacked up with above the curve going on and winning a Group 1 recently. And I think that at 16s, 14s, visually, she was so impressive. The form's there with the second place horse at Chester coming out and winning a Group 1 could just be overpriced at 14. So I'll be having a go each way with the Aidan O'Brien horse.
Yeah, it's definitely a classy renewal of the race, and hopefully for myself, I hope Emily Upjohn. I just hope for the sport actually that Emily Upjohn goes and wins really, really well, because I just think she could be seriously extra special. And it's like when you have a horse like this, you almost think of, oh, can she be the next Enable? Like stuff like that, and it'd be great to go and see her progress and go on to do stuff like she. Look, it's hard to compare horses like that before seeing her go and win races like this. But you'd love that to happen, I think, for the sport.
But it's so rare. It's so rare that it does happen, isn't it? Do you know, that you get a start, that you get something that is outstanding, that's just a cut above even the best of the best, you know? And I think that's what you're looking to see here. It's rare that the plan comes together. Like.
Yeah, and what she's shown to date, you can only start believing or thinking that she might go that way. And like I mentioned, for 60,000 guineas in the flat game, that's not a lot of money for a horse, really, compared to some of the horses out there. So it would be really good to see. So, chaps, that's all for the races on Friday on ITV at Epsom. We're now going to move on to Derby Day itself, the Saturday, and we'll go back to the start, which is the 2 o'clock. And the Epsom Downs Handicap Stakes, Class 2, over 1 mile, 2 furlongs. Frankie, we'll start with you on this one. Another tricky handicap to get stuck into. Where does the value lie at this point, do you think?
It is. I'm just moving myself across. There was two I was looking at. One was Blue Trail at the top of the market, and the other was the Archie Watson's Sweeping, with a couple of listed races to his name. In a field where there's not a lot of horses that have done a huge amount. You'd have to ignore that run at Pontefract, but just didn't look like he wanted to race really that day. And then opened his account over 1 mile 1 on the all-weather and seemed to stay well. I think stacks up quite nicely here to come back to turf off a mark of 96. So Sweeping, I think, would probably be my selection, but Blue Trail definitely worth a look as well, with Buick on board for Charlie Appleby, one that could be quite nicely weighted with just the one run on turf and only going up a pound for running well enough last time out.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about with Sweeping is the weight. But if you look at its back form, I think it ran in the Chesham behind some really nice horses, and running a really good race. I think fourth on just on his second run behind Point Lonsdale, Reach for the Moon. And obviously turned out to be really nice horses. So look, if it's got the class, the weight won't matter. And at 10 to 1 currently, it might be a nice bet. The horse I came down on was the Marco Botti trained War Horse. This 3-year-old improved for every run as a juvenile, stepping up to 10 furlongs on its final start last year at Goodwood and got off the mark in what looked a good maiden stakes to me. Returned in March of this year at Doncaster, was a good second of 8 in a Class 3 handicap behind Grand Alliance for Charlie Fellows, who's entered in the Derby. Sent back over the same course and distance, was strangely below par, but putting that run behind him in a much better race last time out at Sandown, he got back to winning ways in quite determined fashion. Only up £2 for that, for mark of 87. I don't think he's hit his ceiling yet. Listening to Marco Botti's interview after the race, he said this horse could even go on to do his best work as a 4-year-old and will always be progressing. So I'm happy to hear that, and I'm going to take a chance on Warhorse at 7 to 1 to keep improving. Paul, who did you land on?
I've gone with Knowlton Cross to reverse that form at Warhorse. He placed second in that last time out. There was only 4 runners. I think we'll see better from Knowlton Cross here from stall 4. Does like to go forward. He's ideally pitched to do so. And I think he's a handy weight here based on 3. And I think he could run well at a bit of a price, around about the 9 to 1 mark under Sylvester D'Souza.
Yeah, I did look at that because he didn't get beat by much. But yeah, I'm going to stick with Warhorse and we'll do battle on that one, and we'll see how it goes. The first Group 3 of the day on Saturday is the Princess Elizabeth Stakes, over 1 mile and half a furlong. Paul, we'll start with you. Quite a tricky affair, I thought. 10 runners going to post, all very similar ability, clash with each other, some of them already this season. Who was the one that you fancy?
Yeah, I think it's a bit more open than the betting suggests. I've gone with the favourite at the moment, is Bashkarova. She's round at the 2 to 1 mark. I certainly can't see her shortening. And she might even go off at a bigger price come Saturday afternoon. She appeared not to stay the 10 furlongs at Doncaster last November when losing her unbeaten record. She was 3 from 3 prior to that. I thought she made a pleasing return to action when finishing second in the listed event at Goodwood at the end of April. That run should have put her spot on here, and I think Bashkarova will take the beating.
Yeah, the only thing I looked at that was the 9 to 4. I thought was a bit skinny. I thought, like you said, I think that horse will get bigger, but look, he's got an obvious chance. Haggis in flying form, Marquand in flying form. They don't get the Cheveley Parks wrong a lot, and it was a nice race. It run last time out, so yeah, definitely got a chance. Frankie, who's your selection?
I'm gonna go against Paul with Mrs. Fitzherbert to retain that form with Bashkarova. It was also Mrs. Fitzherbert's first appearance this year and won well after having a bit of trouble in the running and still managing to battle hard and get up. And I think given that she did have to battle that day to get up, plus the fact that she's won over a similar trip on the all-weather, I'm just trying to find where, at Wolves, 1 mile 1 or 142 yards, I think, that day, suggests that she'll get the trip. And at the prices, I don't know why you'd have Bashkarova so much shorter, given that he came out worse off, or she came out worse off when they went head-to-head last time out.
Yeah, that was the piece of form that you've really got to look at with this race. If you're backing horses at the top of the market, and you've got to work out for yourself who's going to retain it, or if Bashkarova 9 to 4 is going to reverse it. And the market's very suggests that the cheaper horse will. But again, we'll have to see. I came away from all that. I couldn't make my mind up on that, and I just thought, if you can't make your mind, let's leave it and try and look for value elsewhere. And the horse I actually tipped up on her return at Newbury this season is Majestic Glory. I'm going to stick with her for Andrew Balding, currently around 8 to 1, 9 to 1. She needed her first run at Windsor as a juvenile. She then went off over 6 furlongs at Newbury and finished next second. Backed that up at Newmarket over the same trip, getting off the mark at the third time of asking. She stepped up to 7 furlongs on the Rally Mile, and she went on to land the Group 3 Sweet Solera Stakes, which looked quite a nice race. And she made it, which made it back-to-back wins, comfortably beating a Group 1 winner in Wild Beauty. She was then tried in the Group 2 Rockfell Stakes and Group 1 Fillies Mile. Outclassed in both, never ran any race, but the actual form of both those races have turned out to be quite nice. And I think she was better than both those runs. She was sent over 7 furlongs for a return this season in the Group 3 Fred Darling Stakes. She finished a really good staying on third, I thought. Thought when she was pulled out and had a go, she was just flying late on. That was over 7 furlongs. The step up to 8.5 here, I thought that'd be absolutely perfect for her. And if you actually look compared to a lot of the field, she's been saved for this since April, and she might just be a bit fresher. And I think around the 8 to 1 mark, I'm happy to play her each way against the field. I think she's got a big chance if she does stay on like she did last time out. So another Group 3 Epsom that looks quite a tidy race is the Diomed Stakes over a mile. Quite a classy renewal, Paul, I thought, this year for this race. Only a small field going to post. You've got Modern News 11 to 10 favourites. Mutasabek for Charlie Hills 3 to 1. Magellan for John and Thady Gosden 13 to 2. And then Finest Sound, Zarkuski, Escobar, 8 to 1, 11 to 1, and 14 to 1. Who was the horse that you came down on?
I've gone with the Charles Hills trained Mutasabek. Modern News wasn't passed over likely, but I just think at the prices, Mutasabek represents a bit more value here. He won on seasonal reappearance at Thirsk. He chased home Lights On, who has a rating of 113 at Sandown last time out, and was only beaten the neck on that occasion. Modern News, the favourite, has a rating of 111 here, who's Modern News sitting currently at the top of the betting market. If on paper, if Mutasabek reproduces that Sandown run, I think it'll be a lot closer than the betting suggests. Like at the minute, I'm looking Modern News around the 6 to 5 mark, Mutasabek running with the 7 to 2 mark. And for me, I think the Charles Hills runner under Jim Crowley represents a bit more value here if you're having a bet in this one.
Yeah, I'm absolutely on the same page as you here, Paul. I think Mutasabek is the value in the field. I wouldn't say I'm happy to take on Modern News. I think Modern News is quite a nice horse, and any horse chasing a hat trick, especially for Charlie Appleby's got to be you've got to be wary of. But I just thought around 3 to 1, and could even get slightly bigger if Modern News does get backed into odds on. That he's big value. Quite a frustrating horse, I think, for connections really gone on when he first started his career to everyone thought that he was going to be a world beater, and it's flopped on occasion, but his run last time out, and even its win at Thirsk at the start of the season was proving to me he's getting back where he wants to be under Charlie Hills, and that lights on form I think is going to be quite strong going forward this season. The only issue I had last time out was the ride given by Jim Crowley. I wanted to be a bit closer, finding gaps. And he could have committed a bit early. Look, that's very easy to mistake. I'm not a jockey, but I wanted him to be a bit slightly closer. And I think if he is a bit slightly closer to the early pace, the way he flew home in that race, I thought was special. So I thought Mutasabek around the 3-1 mark was the value play in this field. Frankie, we're going to make it 3 out of 3, or are you going against us?
A full house, lads, for the first time this week. A full house. Yeah, I'm in full agreement. I mean, you've both gone through it by now. But I'm in the same camp. But the prices, I think it's definitely the bet in the race. And I quite like, 8th at Goodwood, but if you watch the race, ran a much better race than 8 out of 9 would suggest. And I like the fact that going back this year, had what you could say was just an opener at Thirsk over 7 and won easily in lesser company, and then stepped back up to the mile and put in a very solid performance at Sandown. So yeah, I'm in the Mutasabek camp as well.
Yeah, I thought he was really unlucky not to win last time out, and I hope he upholds that form. And I'll just give you a mention to McGallen. I think he's a much better horse than his run at Chester when last seen. I didn't handle the track whatsoever, and I think he's a much better horse. But I would like to think Mutasabek's got a bit more finishing power, maybe. But it's quite a big price at 13-2 now, and I wouldn't be surprised if that does go close as well. But yeah, Mutasabek for the full house for the lot of us. So what looks to me the trickiest event over the 2 days, and every year is one of the hardest to call, is the Epsom Derby dash. The Epsom Derby, is the dash handicap. 20 runners, very familiar sprinters to us all that keep coming back every year, but always beating one another all the way through the season. And we've got to go and try and find the winner of the 20 runners. Frankie, I'll give you the option of starting first in this one. Who did you come down on?
It's not easy, is it? I absolutely love this race. I think, obviously grew up in Cheltenham, National Hunt's my bag, but I think watching the dash was probably what got me most excited about the flat when I first started watching flat racing. I think it's a cracking race. And there's one in here with a brilliant story as well, Living the Dream, whose older brother, Live in the Moment, also runs in this race, trained by Adam West, who's local to Epsom. I know connections are absolutely buzzing about this. What a day to have 2 in the dash. I think it's a cracker, and I think it's got a really good chance. I do always latch on to horses that have a bit of a story behind them because it makes it better if they win. But I think the horse has got a great chance to be on the hat trick. The last 2 wins have come over 5 furlongs, and there's something about a 5 furlong sprint rather than 6 furlong. I like distance. I like 5 foot, like in a 5 furlong race. I like horses that have won over 5 because you just got to be that bit sharper. You've got to be quick out the gate. You've got to be sharp, and I think you get away with a lot less over 5 than you might over 6. And sometimes just being sharper at 5 rather than talent can actually prevail. So 2 wins over 5 coming into this has backed up each quite nicely despite a rise in the weights, and I think got a good chance here. Connections will be excited, that's for sure.
Well, I'm going to make it 2 for Living the Dream because when I was going, yeah, we're living the dream if this wins. When going through this field, and look, 20 runners is very tough, but it took me quite a long time. It took me the longest time out of all the races going through because you've got to look at each horse on its merit, I think. Even at the horse at the bottom of the market, they can still run big race at 5 furlongs. It's a sprint. Whoever's quickest out the gates get a good position. Has got a really good chance. But the way that this horse has turned into a serious sprinter this year really, really makes me think that even off its mark of 99, this could be even better horse than that. And if you actually look at it, with £3 taken off by Sean Curran, who's a really handy lad for his claimer, I think. He's only £4 higher than his win last time out at Chester. On ground, he might not have liked. I don't think good to soften his bag. I think he needs good ground. And I think if the way it does dry by this Saturday, good ground, it might be absolutely set up perfect for him. And Living the Dream would be my selection. Just off the 2 runs he's had this season, I think he's very progressive. And yeah, for everything you said, Frankie, I agree with. One I will just mention, there's 20 runners. I'm going to go Dutch in this race. I'm going to throw another in the mix at a bigger price at around 10-1. He's Mockatil. Like we talked about with Soto Sizzler, this lad is a bit of a course specialist. Absolutely loves it round here for Ian Williams. Doing his best work, definitely at the track. Raced 5 times this season, and his one win came over course and distance when easily taking a Class 3 handicap off a mark of 82. Mockatil also landed this event last year off a mark of 82, and with Harry Davis taking £5 off his mark of 87, he's back down to a mark of 82. So it seems to me that his mark is 82, his track is Epsom, his ground is quick, and he's getting everything he wants. And I thought at 10-1, I thought he couldn't be ignored, and definitely an each way play with, I assume, plenty of extra places with certain bookmakers for this race. Paul, go and solve this puzzle.
Yeah, it could be handier to find the winner of the national now than find the winner of this race. I think I've gone with Sunday Sovereign to go one better than that of when last seen when he returned to form and finishing second to 16 at York last month. You know, he's a hold-up performer. He likes to be delivered late. He's got a good man on top in Rob Hornby, teaming up with Tim Easterby. It's an unusual jockey-trainer combination. Not quite sure whether the owners would have had a hand to play in that. I'm not so sure. I think to do with horses with the Boiling team. So I'm going to guess that may be a connection there. The race should be run to suit him, and I'd be expecting another bold run here from stall number 11. And at a bit of a price, another I'm going to have to mention is the Matthew Smith trains Master Matt. I thought he ran well at the Curragh last time out in what I'd imagine was a stepping stone for this race. Drawn in stall 14, Roland Whelan takes the mount. But I think Blue de Vega could be capable of springing up a bit of a surprise here at a bit of a price if you are having a small each way flutter. He was a shock winner 2 starts back at Newbury, and he's won off his current mark of 100 in his, on his best form back in the past. So I think Blue de Vega could possibly be one that might just bring a bit of a surprise from stall 12, but it's Sunday Sovereign for me.
Yeah, definitely a tricky race. We just spoke through a few horses that all got chances, and even more we could talk about that definitely have. And like you said, I think this could be as hard as picking the winner as the national, but we'll have to see what happens. But like you said, Frank, it is a great race to get people involved. But one person I wouldn't want to be watching this race is the commentator. 20 runners with over 5 furlongs, and you've got a minute.
You've got to talk fast.
You've got to talk fast. You've got to name them all at least twice. That's not my bag. So I'd rather be watching than commentating on that one. So, lads, the final race we're going to cover, it's the big one, arguably the biggest race on the flat of the season, every season for flat racing fans, and it's the Epsom Derby. 17 runners go to post this year. At the top of the market, we have the strong favourite, Desert Crown, for Sir Michael Stout, 7-4. Aidan O'Brien at Stonehenge, 7-2. Supplemented for Charlie Appleby's Nation's Pride, around 6-1. Changing of the Guard, 8-1. Pisbadil for Donica at 10-1, and then about 14-1 bar that. Frankie, we'll start with you on this one.
As I look at it, I realise I'm kind of following the same trend in that once York was said and done, I kind of said, have we just seen the winner of the Oaks and the Derby? And may well be the case. The 2 favourites may well win. My kind of each way bet for both races come in Aidan O'Brien trained, second string you could call them, because Ryan Moore doesn't take the ride on either of them, and both won at Chester, so there's a little bit of a theme going on. I do fancy the favourite. I thought Desert Crown was just so impressive that day at York, and just looks a top class horse that will stay the trip, and looks a perfect kind of type for a derby. Changing of the Guard's not a massive price, but at 7s, that would be my each way play, who was equally as impressive visually at Chester, beating New London, who was kind of the hype horse at the start of the season, especially I remember at Guinea's Day around Newmarket, that was kind of the horse that everyone was talking up that we hadn't seen yet, and absolutely put New London to bed. That went off 4-11 that day, and again, connections were very, very impressed and excited about this horse. And interesting that Ryan Moore doesn't take the ride, but that would be my each way play. I think drawn at, is it 12? Yeah, Desert Crown drawn at 12 and Changing the Guard drawn at 16. I'd quite like to see Changing the Guard go forward and Desert Crown to follow.
Yeah, for me in this one, you always don't want to be tipping favourites. But like I said with Emily Upjohn in the Oaks, I do think this is as simple as it is. I really do. And even though the Derby's not simple, I think this Desert Crown is a freak. I think he's an absolute freak. Sir Michael, I'm glad to see Sir Michael start have another class horse. I think this really will. And I think the way he's been treated this season, this horse has been absolutely perfectly set up for the race. If you actually look at his last race, and he drifted up about 7-2 in that Dante Stakes, which I think is probably one of the best trials for this race. Stout was saying before, look, he'll need the run. He's only an 80% fit. And I know trainers say that just to cover their own backs in case the horse doesn't perform to what they've been shown at home. But there was a clip with Rafe Beckett that said he'd been watching on the gallops or heard on the gallops that Desert Crown had been working with a 112 horse and went 5 lengths clear with nothing asked of him. That's a serious performance, serious performance if that's true. And I just think this horse is only going to get better for the trip, get better for racing more. And I think at 7-4, it's a serious bet for me, Desert Crown. I think he's got a really good chance. But 17 runners in the field, we want to try and find some each way value. And the one that took the eye, if I was going to have a little go on each way, would be Nation's Pride, around 6-7-1, just because of the way it was supplemented. Godolphin already had 2 in the field. Why would you go and supplement a third if you thought those 2 were good enough? To me, that means that there might be not. Buick's took over on this ride as well. And the way it won last time out at Newmarket over 10 furlongs, beating Who Your Mouth by 7 lengths, who I thought quite a nice horse. I thought was quite taking. And I think this, like Desert Crown, this horse is only going to get better for the step up in trip. And at a general, 6-7-1, I think would be my each way play in the race. And I just think it's got a lot of factors going for it. Paul, who's your Derby selection or selections?
I've gone with Walk of Stars for Charlie Appleby and James Doyle. Like I said earlier, I think he possibly learned more last time out at Lingfield when chasing home United Nations. He was a beaten favourite on that occasion. That was at the beginning of May. He has showed a bit of character, and I think it shows just how big of an engine he has to be somewhat just acting the lad, taking the mick, and still get as close as he did to United Nations. He's drawn his stall 9. I'd imagine James Doyle will have plenty to follow. He can pick 1 or 2 to follow, and I'd imagine we'll not see him arrive till pretty late on here. Like he was gaining on United Nations passing the post at Lingfield, and I think William had to give him a couple of cracks down the neck just to keep him on the track. So he obviously has his quirks, but hugely talented, and I just think he could be staying on if he handles the track, which I think he will. Epsom might just with the camber, Doyle have to be trying to keep him straight with a horse that has his quirks. That might just play to his strengths, and I'd be expecting him to stay on. Best of a lot, I think, approaching inside the last couple of furlongs, and around about the 16-1 mark, there'll be a couple of extra places there. There'll be certainly 4 places, I'd imagine, if you shop around. So I think it's Walk of Stars for me.
Yeah, and what story it would be, wouldn't it, for the Doyler winning the 2,000, 1,000 in the Derby in the same season? That's some serious going. One horse I just want to mention before we finish up is Star of India. Like you mentioned with Walk of Stars, I think Star of India is a massive battler. I think sometimes you might need that in certain derbies, and I think Star of India will definitely stay on and has a big chance at 20-1 to hit the frame, definitely. So if you're having a little flutter each way, that might be where the money goes as well. Lads, that's all of the Epsom race we're going to cover for Friday and Saturday. Now all I ask of you is it's nap time. So I want your nap across the 2 days, please. Paul, I'll give you first go.
Oh,
it's a tricky one.
I'm going to stick with Friday. I do like Estate in the opener at 2 o'clock on Friday, but I'm going to side with Hookham. I think a small field, there'll be a bit of pace on. I can't see any excuses. I think the best horse will win on the day, and for me, I hope that's Hookham. Okay, Frankie.
Oh, God. I might stick with that tricky race, but I just quite like that Mrs. Fitzherbert in the Prince Elizabeth Stakes. Just to hold that form. I think the, I can't remember the name of it, the favourite Bashkanova. Should be Park Colours, is a Haggis train.
Bashkanova, yeah.
Everybody's going to be saying that'll improve, but I mean, so could Mrs. Fitzherbert and could retain that form. So yeah, I'll stick with her.
Okay, I'll keep it very simple, lads. Emily Upjohn, name how much you want it to be. I think she's a freak. I think she wins this, and I think she'll go on to do some special things this season. Yeah, I think she's got a very, very good chance. So, lads, thanks again as always. What a cracking weekend is set to be, with some cracking group races at Epsom and the Derby to top it all off. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the Winners Enclosure channel, with plenty more coming, with Ascot just around the corner. And lads, let's hope we've found some winners on what looks a tricky 2 days at Epsom. So cheers again, lads.
Cheers, James.